It was one of those mornings when the air feels too quiet, like the world is waiting for trouble to start. I was finishing my coffee on the porch, staring at the pasture where Duke, the most stubborn bull I've ever owned, was glaring at a patch of sunlight like it owed him money. The peace didn't last long. Across the street, I saw Karen, our HOA president and self-proclaimed guardian of neighborhood aesthetics, marching toward my property in her usual power walk, clipboard in hand and lips pursed tight enough to crush a walnut. Whenever she showed up before 8 a.m., it meant she'd found something new to complain about. She didn't even pretend to wave this time. Instead, she stood at the fence line and started snapping pictures with her phone, muttering something about unauthorized agricultural structures. I could already guess where this was going. The HOA had been at war with me ever since I built the barn last spring. According to them, it clashed with the neighborhood's modern theme. According to me, it kept my livestock from freezing their hooves off. When I called out, asking if she needed help, Karen didn't miss a beat. This structure violates Article 14C of the HOA Charter. You were told to remove it. I was told by you, I said. The county inspector cleared it. She sniffed like I'd said something obscene. The HOA holds higher standards than the county. That was Karen's entire worldview summarized in one sentence. She didn't care about logic or legality, just power. And ever since she'd been re-elected as HOA president, she'd taken that power personally. She'd fined people for leaving trash bins visible for more than 15 minutes, for having bird feeders that encouraged pest activity, and once for painting a mailbox that wasn't on the approved beige spectrum. My barn was her white whale. I watched her take one last dramatic photo, then stomp away. I figured that would be the end of it, at least for the day. I was wrong. That afternoon, while I was fixing a loose hinge on the paddock gate, I saw her again. This time with another HOA board member, a lanky man named Bruce who looked permanently apologetic for existing. They were pointing at the barn, talking in sharp, clipped tones. Then Karen did something that made my blood pressure spike. She lifted the latch on the front gate and marched straight onto my property. "Hey!" I called out. "Private land, Karen." She ignored me and headed toward the barn like she was on a mission from God. Bruce hesitated, mumbling something, but she barked at him to document everything. I could feel my patience thinning to a thread. When I reached her, she was yanking on the barn door, which was locked with a heavy padlock. "This structure is going to be condemned," she declared. "If you won't let me inspect it, I'll report you for obstruction." I folded my arms. "You don't have jurisdiction here. This is agricultural zoning. The HOA stops at the fence line." She sneered. "We'll see about that." Then, in a tone that could have frozen lava, she said, "You can't just do whatever you want because you own a few animals. The rest of us have to look at this eyesore every day." That was classic Karen, her personal discomfort translated into a community emergency. I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I unlocked the barn door, swung it open, and gestured dramatically. "Be my guest. Inspect away." She stepped inside, nose wrinkled, eyes darting around the hay bales and feed bins like she expected to find illegal contraband. Duke, the bull, was penned up on the far side, chewing cud and glaring at her. "What's that smell?" she demanded. "It's a barn," I said. "It smells like a barn." Bruce hovered at the door, clearly wanting to leave. Karen, on the other hand, was just getting started. She began snapping pictures of everything: feed sacks, tools, even Duke, while lecturing me about sanitation standards and HOA bylaws that absolutely did not apply to livestock. I stood back, arms crossed, letting her dig her own hole. When she turned toward the stall door where Duke stood, I warned her, "Don't go near him. He's not friendly with strangers." Naturally, she ignored me. She got as close as the barrier allowed and started muttering about unapproved large animals. Duke took one slow step forward, snorted, and stomped a hoof. That should have been her first clue to back off. Instead, she snapped another picture, the flash reflecting off his eyes like twin flames. "See? she said triumphantly. Aggressive and unsafe. Exactly what I expected. I was about to suggest she leave before the bull decided to teach her a physics lesson when my phone buzzed. It was my wife, calling from town. I stepped outside to take it, figuring Karen couldn't possibly get into more trouble in the 30 seconds I'd be gone. I was wrong again. Halfway through the call, I heard shouting from inside the barn. Then a loud metallic clang. I sprinted back just in time to see the main door swing shut behind her. Karen was inside, locked in. Bruce looked like he might faint. She closed the door from the inside and it latched. I tugged on the handle, but the heavy latch had dropped into place. From inside, Karen's voice came shrill and echoing. "Let me out. This is illegal." "Karen," I said through the door, trying not to laugh, "the latch is on your side. You can just lift it." "It's jammed," she shrieked. "This is a violation of my rights." Behind her voice, I could hear Duke snorting louder, hooves shifting in agitation. Apparently, he didn't appreciate uninvited company. "Stay calm," I said, though my grin was betraying me. "Don't move too close to the pen." "Don't tell me what to do," she snapped. There was a loud rustle of hay, followed by a startled squeal. "What is that noise?" "That would be Duke," I said. "The bull." For the next few seconds there was silence, then the unmistakable sound of her scrambling backward and bumping into something metallic. Duke bellowed, deep and furious, shaking the whole structure. Karen screamed. "He's coming toward me!" I could barely hold it together. Bruce looked at me, panicked. Should we open it?" "I'm trying," I said, wiggling the latch that refused to budge from the outside. "It's old. Might take a minute." Inside, Karen was still yelling. Something about lawsuits, something about animal control, and a lot of words not fit for polite company. After what felt like an eternity of fumbling and muffled chaos, I managed to slide the latch free. The door flew open, and Karen stumbled out, covered in hay and red-faced, her phone dangling from her hand. Duke was standing just behind her, snorting like a freight train, as if personally offended by her existence. She jabbed a finger at me. "You did this on purpose." "Karen," I said as calmly as I could, "you broke into my barn." He didn't reply. She just stomped past Bruce, yelling that she was filing charges, and that I endangered a homeowner. Bruce gave me a helpless shrug before scurrying after her. As they disappeared down the road, I leaned against the barn door, still catching my breath from laughing too hard. Duke let out one more snort and went back to chewing hay, completely unbothered. That night, I got an official HOA email accusing me of housing dangerous animals in proximity to residential homes. Attached were a few of the photos Karen had taken. Half blurry, one featuring Duke mid-snort, looking every bit the demon she wanted him to be. I just smiled. If she thought that was the end of this feud, she was sorely mistaken. It was only the beginning, and next time, I'd make sure the latch really couldn't be opened from the inside. The next morning, I woke to the sound of tires crunching on gravel. When I looked out the window, there was a white SUV parked half across my driveway. Karen's, of course, and a county animal control van behind it. My stomach sank, but I also couldn't help the laugh that escaped. She'd really done it. She'd called animal control on Duke. By the time I stepped outside, Karen was already mid-lecture, waving her phone like a badge. "This is the man I told you about," she announced to the two officers as though unveiling a criminal. "He's keeping a violent bull within a few feet of a family neighborhood. You could hear it roaring last night." "Roaring?" I said, wiping sleep from my eyes. "Karen, that's not a lion. Bulls don't roar." She shot me a glare sharp enough to cut wire. The officers, two younger guys who looked more amused than alarmed, tried to keep straight faces. One of them, a tall man named Jeff, asked to see the animal. "Sure," I said. "Follow me. Just keep a few steps back unless you want to be the next victim." Karen huffed and trailed us, muttering something about unsafe conditions and negligence. I led them to the barn, half expecting her to refuse to enter after yesterday's debacle, but apparently she'd built up a new supply of righteous courage overnight. Duke was in his pen, calm and chewing hay, sunlight filtering through the slats across his broad back. He looked peaceful, almost regal, until he spotted Karen. Then his tail flicked once, slow and deliberate, like a gunfighter flexing his trigger finger. "There!" Karen exclaimed, pointing dramatically. "Look at the aggression in its eyes." Jeff leaned on the stall rail. "Ma'am, that's just how bulls look." "Don't patronize me," she snapped. "This creature charged at me yesterday." I cleared my throat. "Technically, you charged at him." Her head whipped toward me. "I was conducting a safety inspection." Jeff turned to me with a half-smile. "Sir, do you have permits for livestock?" "Sure do." I handed him a folder with my county license, property deed, and an email from the zoning office confirming agricultural exemption. He scanned it, then handed it back with a nod. "Everything seems in order," he said. "Animals healthy, enclosed, and nowhere near residential lot. I don't see an issue." Karen's jaw dropped. "You're joking." "No, ma'am," Jeff replied evenly. "He's compliant." Her face turned red, the kind of deep shade that usually precedes a thunderstorm. "So anyone can just bring dangerous livestock into our community and no one cares? What about the children? What about the property values?" Jeff tried to defuse her. "Ma'am, property lines are clear. The HOA doesn't extend jurisdiction onto agricultural parcels. If you want to dispute that, you'll have to take it up with the county." She crossed her arms, glaring daggers at me. "Oh, I will." They left soon after, but I knew that look. Karen wasn't backing off. When she ran out of rules to enforce, she made new ones. Sure enough, that evening I found a printed letter taped to my mailbox. Notice of community hazard violation. According to HOA directive, large animal enclosures are hereby deemed visual obstructions and must be shielded from neighboring properties by approved fencing material. Failure to comply within 72 hours will result in a fine of $500 per day. The kicker? The directive was dated that morning. She'd literally written a new rule just to target me. My wife, Mia, found me laughing at the letter. "She's unbelievable," she said. "She got locked in your barn, and she's still doubling down?" "That's the Karen doctrine," I said. "Admit nothing, escalate everything." Mia frowned. "You're not actually going to build that fence, are you?" "Not exactly," I said. "But I'll give her what she asked for, technically." The next day, I went to the hardware store and bought a few rolls of black privacy mesh. The kind used for temporary construction sites. It was ugly, cheap, and perfectly within code. I rigged it up around the barn with zip ties and bamboo poles. From the road, it looked like a dystopian fortress, which I found hilarious. Sure enough, Karen came marching up within the hour. "What is that?" she demanded. "You said to shield the enclosure," I said. "It's shielded." "This looks atrocious." "I agree," I said. "But it meets HOA standards for visual obstruction. You can file a complaint if you like." She did. In fact, she filed 3, each denied by the board for insufficient cause. Apparently even Bruce had drawn the line at weaponizing paperwork. For 2 glorious weeks, she left me alone. I thought maybe she'd finally realized she couldn't win. But I underestimated her capacity for obsession. One evening, I caught the faint beam of a flashlight near the barn. I stepped quietly onto the porch and saw a shadow moving along the fence line. The shape was unmistakable, petite, determined, and wearing that awful floral windbreaker. Karen was sneaking around my property again. I grabbed my phone and started recording, walking slowly toward the barn. The flashlight flickered across the mesh, then vanished. I heard the soft creak of the barn door and muttered a curse under my breath. "Karen," I called out. "You really don't learn, do you?" No answer. I opened the door, and she froze like a deer in headlights. She was halfway to Duke's stall, holding a measuring tape and a notepad. This is trespassing, I said flatly. She lifted her chin. I'm collecting evidence for the HOA. This structure still violates setback ordinances. Those are county ordinances, I said. And you're on private property. You can't stop me from enforcing the rules. I can if it's illegal. She turned toward me, defiant. Then call the sheriff. I'll tell him you're housing an aggressive animal without proper restraint. As if on cue, Duke snorted and slammed a hoof, sending dust into the air. She flinched, backing up just an inch too far. Her heel caught on a feed bucket, and she went tumbling backward into the hay. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Out loud. Not funny, she shouted, brushing straw from her hair. You're right, I said. It's hilarious. She scrambled to her feet, livid. You think you're clever, don't you? I try, I said. Now get out before you meet Duke up close again. She stomped out, muttering something about legal action. I followed her to the fence line, where she spun around. You're going to regret this, she hissed. You think you can mock me, but I know how to deal with people like you. Great, I said. Just don't deal with my livestock. The next morning, the threat arrived in official form, another HOA letter. This one marked urgent notice of investigation. It claimed I had unsecured hazardous materials in my barn and would be subject to a board inspection. This was her new angle, pretending it wasn't about Duke, but about public safety. I almost admired the creativity. When the so-called inspection day arrived, I decided not to play defense. I called the county sheriff myself, explained the situation, and asked if someone could witness the event. Deputy Collins, who dealt with Karen's complaints before, agreed to stop by. Karen showed up with 2 other board members and a smug little smile, clipboard ready. We're here for a mandatory site assessment, she announced. Perfect, I said. The sheriff will want your signatures confirming entry. Her smile faltered. Sheriff? Yep. Said it'd be wise to have an officer present for legal documentation. You know, liability and all that. She froze, realizing she'd walked into a trap. That's not necessary. Oh, I insist. When Collins arrived, she tried to pivot, claiming she was there by invitation. He raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, trespassing twice doesn't sound like an invitation. Her face turned crimson. She sputtered something about misunderstanding, grabbed her clipboard, and stormed off, leaving her fellow board members confused and mortified. As her SUV sped down the road, Collins shook his head. That woman's gonna dig her own hole. I grinned. She already has. I'm just waiting for her to fall in. That night, I installed a motion camera on the barn, just in case her curiosity struck again. I had a feeling it would. And sure enough, I was right. Because less than 48 hours later, Karen would come back, and this time, she wouldn't be getting out of the barn so easily. 2 days passed before I saw Karen again, which was unusual. Normally, she'd appear within 24 hours of any perceived injustice, clipboard loaded and moral outrage at full charge. But this time there was silence, too much silence. It was the kind of calm that feels staged, like the moment before a magician yanks off the tablecloth. I should have known she was plotting. On the 3rd morning, I got my answer when a white county vehicle rolled up my driveway. A man in khakis stepped out, holding a clipboard and an official badge that read Animal Control Officer. He smiled politely and said, "Morning, Mr. Hale. We received a complaint about an aggressive bull and unsafe livestock conditions." Of course, Karen had gone nuclear. I invited him in, trying to hide my irritation. "You're welcome to take a look, officer. But I can already guess who filed that complaint." He chuckled. "You'd be surprised how often neighbors feud over things like this. I just need to do a routine check." Inside the barn, Duke stood calmly in his pen, flicking his tail at flies. The officer looked around, inspecting feed bins, fencing, and water trough. Everything was up to code. I kept my animals cleaner than some people kept their kitchens. "Looks fine to me," he said after a few minutes. You've got good ventilation, solid fencing, and your animals in excellent shape. Appreciate it, I said. Mind if I ask, what exactly did the complaint say? He flipped a page. The caller claimed your bull escaped and charged at her. Twice. I almost laughed. She's the one who broke into his barn. He didn't escape, he defended his personal space. He nodded knowingly. Happens more than you'd think. We'll close the case as unfounded. When he left, I watched his truck disappear down the road. Across the street, Karen's curtains fluttered. I could practically feel her staring. That evening, Emma and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, sipping iced tea. You think she'll back off now that animal control sided with you? She asked. I smirked. Not a chance. Karen's ego has the lifespan of a cockroach. She'll just find a new angle. I was right again. The next day, a code enforcement officer showed up. Different uniform, same clipboard. Mr. Hale? Got a report of unpermitted electrical work in an agricultural structure. I almost burst out laughing. Let me guess, anonymous complaint? Yeah, he said, smiling wryly. Though the anonymous part didn't last long. She called twice to make sure we were on our way. I led him into the barn, where the only electrical work was a single motion sensor light and a solar-powered fan. Both installed by licensed contractors. I showed him the permits, still pinned to the inside wall. He signed off within minutes. Everything checks out. You're fine. Do me a favor, I said. If she calls again, tell her you're referring her to a therapist. He laughed as he left. But for me, the joke had started to wear thin. Karen wasn't just annoying anymore, she was escalating. That night, my motion sensors went off again at 1:13 a.m. When I pulled up the camera feed, my stomach tightened. It wasn't just Karen this time. She had Bruce with her. The two of them were creeping along the fence line, whispering and pointing flashlights at the barn. Emma came downstairs in her robe. She's back. Yeah, I said. And she brought her emotional support stooge. We watched as Bruce held up what looked like a clipboard and started filming. Karen approached the barn door again, same door that had trapped her twice. I half expected her to learn from experience, but clearly that was too optimistic. This time, though, she didn't go inside. She just circled the building, taking photos of the security lights, the wiring, even the manure pile. Then she stopped, whispered something to Bruce, and started spray painting something on one of the boards. I zoomed in. The word nuisance appeared in big, dripping red letters. Emma gasped. She's vandalizing it. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff's department. It's Hale. You might want to send a unit. Our local HOA president's tagging private property like a teenager. By the time the deputy arrived, Karen and Bruce were still there. She was standing in front of the barn, giving some kind of speech to the camera, probably rehearsing her next community safety video. The cruiser's headlights hit them full beam, and Bruce nearly dropped his phone. The deputy stepped out, calm but authoritative. Evening, folks. What's going on here? Karen straightened, her voice dripping with false confidence. Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man's barn is a public hazard. We were documenting evidence. I stepped out behind the deputy. You were documenting it with a can of spray paint? Her face froze. That's community signage. On private property, I said. Without permission. The deputy held up a hand. Ma'am, that's vandalism. I'll need to take your statement. Karen's voice rose in pitch. You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. Not relevant, he said. Please put down the spray can. Bruce, poor guy, immediately did as told. Karen hesitated, then dropped it with a huff. The deputy took our statements, snapped a few photos, and finally turned to me. You want to press charges? I looked at Karen, who was glaring at me like she wanted to vaporize me on the spot. For a second I considered saying yes. But then I remembered how much she loved attention. No, I said. Let's keep it as a formal warning. Maybe next time, she'll think twice before redecorating someone else's property. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't just let me off. I grinned. Sure I can. Consider it neighborly mercy. The deputy escorted them both home, and I spent the next morning power washing red paint off the siding. By noon, the barn looked good as new. Duke watched the whole process like he was supervising. Emma shook her head. You should have pressed charges. Maybe, I said, but letting her stew in humiliation is better punishment. She can't stand losing face. I underestimated her again. A week later, I received a letter, hand-delivered, sealed with the HOA logo. Inside was a final notice of enforcement. Karen had unilaterally voted to fine me $1,500 for maintaining a hostile structure detrimental to community peace. It also threatened escalation to civil litigation if I didn't comply within 10 business days. I stared at it for a long minute, then handed it to Emma. She actually did it. Emma read it, then started laughing so hard she had to sit down. She can't fine you for a barn. She's lost it. Yeah, but she's also printing these letters on HOA stationery. That makes it official enough to fool people. Then hit back officially, Emma said. Use her own weapon. So I did. I spent the next day drafting a letter to the county zoning board, attaching every photo, video, and time-stamped incident involving Karen's trespassing and vandalism. I included the fake fine notice and her handwritten signature from the HOA form. I kept the tone polite and professional, never angry. The best revenge always reads like paperwork. 3 days later, a county investigator called. Mr. Hale? I just wanted to confirm some details regarding a potential misuse of HOA authority. I told him everything, step by step, from her break-ins to the spray paint stunt. He sounded equal parts amused and horrified. We'll take it from here. You've got quite the neighbor. Karen didn't know it yet, but the gears of bureaucracy were turning against her. Meanwhile, she kept pretending nothing was wrong. She still walked around the neighborhood in her blazer and sunglasses like she was the mayor. But I noticed something new. Bruce had stopped accompanying her. Maybe he'd finally realized he was hitching his wagon to a sinking ship. Then, one afternoon, I caught sight of 2 unfamiliar sedans pulling up to Karen's driveway. Men in county uniforms got out and started walking around her property with clipboards. Karen burst out of her front door in full defensive mode, waving papers and demanding explanations. I couldn't hear the words, but her gestures said it all. Rage, panic, disbelief. Emma joined me on the porch. What's going on over there? I smiled. Looks like the county just started an investigation into her misuse of authority. I may have mentioned her name in a few forms. We watched as the officials took photos of her house, then handed her a packet before leaving. Karen stood in her driveway for a long time afterward, frozen like someone who just realized she'd picked a fight she couldn't win. That night, I checked the neighborhood Facebook group. Sure enough, Karen had posted a rant. Beware of malicious neighbors attempting to destroy community leadership through false allegations. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. The comments were brutal. People she'd fined, bullied, or lectured over the years were coming out of the woodwork, sharing their stories. By morning, the post was deleted, and the HOA's next meeting was cancelled until further notice. For the first time since I'd moved here, the neighborhood was peaceful. No surveillance photos, no citations, no unsolicited inspection notices. Just birds, sunlight, and the quiet snort of Duke in the distance. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done yet. She was too proud, too stubborn to let her reputation die quietly. And sure enough, 2 nights later, the cameras picked up her SUV again, this time parking near the rear of the pasture, where the old service gate stood. Emma saw it too. You've got to be kidding me. What now? I zoomed in on the feed. Karen was pacing with a flashlight, talking into her phone, gesturing toward the barn. She looked frantic, desperate, like someone trying to reclaim power that had already slipped away. I don't know what she's planning, I said, but whatever it is, it's not smart. Emma sighed. You're going out there, aren't you? Yeah, I said, grabbing my jacket. If she wants round 3, she's going to get it. And as I walked toward the barn under the cold wash of moonlight, I could already hear Duke snorting impatiently inside, like he knew the night was about to get interesting again. The moon hung low that night, orange and swollen, throwing long shadows over the pasture. The grass was slick with dew, and the barn loomed ahead like a silent witness waiting for another chapter of chaos. As I approached, I could hear Karen's muffled voice, frantic, self-justifying, and unmistakably angry. She wasn't just talking to herself. Someone was on speakerphone. I told you, she was saying. He's hiding violations out here. The county's trying to make me look like the villain, but once I get proof, they'll have to shut him down. I crept closer, staying in the dark behind the tool shed. She was standing near the side door of the barn, one hand gripping her phone, the other fumbling with what looked like a crowbar. She wasn't just snooping this time, she was trying to break in. The voice on the other end sounded tinny through the speaker. Karen, please, don't do anything drastic. The board's already suspended your authority. Just let it go. That must have been Bruce. His tone carried the weary patience of a man who'd learned not to argue with a hurricane. Karen hissed, You don't understand, Bruce. If I can prove he's endangering residents, I'll get reinstated. They'll see I was right all along. She shoved the crowbar under the latch. The metal groaned. Duke snorted from inside, his massive body shifting. That deep, irritated rumble sent a chill up my spine. I stepped out of the shadows. You really don't learn, do you? Karen spun around so fast she nearly dropped her phone. You, she barked. You're trespassing on your own property. Creative accusation, I said. But I think the police will see it differently. Her face was pale under the moonlight, but her eyes were blazing. You think you're so clever. You've humiliated me in front of everyone, my board, the county, the neighborhood. You're not getting away with it. She jammed the crowbar again, harder this time. The latch popped and the barn door swung open. Duke's eyes flashed from the dim interior, red reflections of the security light. Karen, I warned, don't you take another step. I have every right, she snapped and stormed inside. I sighed. Here we go again. By the time I reached the door, she was halfway across the barn, flashlight beam bouncing wildly as she scanned the stalls. Where's your proof now? She shouted, filming everything with her phone. Illegal structures. Dangerous animals. Unstable. Duke bellowed, cutting her off mid-sentence. The sound was enormous, a living thunderclap that shook the walls. Karen froze, her flashlight trembling. Duke took one slow, deliberate step forward. Back up, I said, standing in the doorway. Slowly. But pride was stronger than fear. I'm not scared of your stupid cow, she yelled. Bull, I corrected automatically. She raised her phone like a weapon, its light glaring straight into Duke's face. He snorted once, then charged. The sound of him moving was like a drumbeat, hooves pounding, hay flying, wood creaking. Karen screamed and dove behind a feed bin as Duke slammed into the reinforced gate with a heavy clang. The bar held, but just barely. I ran forward, keeping my voice calm. Easy, boy. Easy, Duke. I reached for the gate latch, talking low. She's not worth it. Karen scrambled to her feet, clutching her phone like a life raft. He attacked me. You saw that. He attacked the sound of your voice, I said. Can't blame him for having good instincts. She tried to push past me, but in her panic, she tripped over a water bucket and went down hard, her flashlight skittering across the floor. It came to rest pointing upward, casting her in this ridiculous horror movie glow, mud-streaked face, wild eyes, hair sticking out at angles. I grabbed her arm to help her up, but she jerked away. Don't touch me. You're assaulting me. Karen, you're the one breaking into my barn for the third time. She wasn't listening. Her breathing was ragged, her phone still recording. Everyone will see what you've done. You've terrorized me with that animal. You locked me in once already. You set this up. I laughed once, sharp, exhausted. You think I trained a bull to perform on command? But the moment I said it, something in her expression changed. The panic drained away, replaced by something colder, calculation. Maybe I don't need proof of your guilt, she said quietly. Just a video that looks like it. Before I could react, she aimed her phone toward Duke, hit record, and started screaming. Help! He's letting the bull loose. It's attacking. I stared, dumbfounded. You're staging this? Duke, confused by the noise, lunged again at the gate, slamming it with his horns. The entire barn shook. Karen shrieked louder, pretending to stumble. The phone camera caught me standing behind her, perfectly positioned to look like the monster in her story. Unbelievable, I muttered. She bolted for the door. I followed, but she turned and shoved me back with surprising strength. Stay away. I've got it all on video. Great, I said. Make sure you include the part where you broke and entered. She ran into the yard, her phone light bobbing as she made for her SUV. I didn't chase her. I just stood there, watching the dust of her tires disappear into the night. Duke snorted behind me, unimpressed. Emma met me at the porch, robe and flashlight again. What now? She's gone, I said. But she's got a video that's going to cause trouble. How bad? She screamed like I was throwing her into a lion pit. She'll edit out everything else. Emma sighed, rubbing her temples. We should just move. Not yet, I said. She's going to hang herself with that footage. I just need to be ready. The next morning, she posted it. Or rather, a heavily edited 30-second clip labeled, HOA President Nearly Mauled by Neighbor's Illegal Bull. It hit the local Facebook groups within hours. The video showed Duke ramming the gate, Karen screaming, and me standing behind her looking stoic. Too stoic. Without context, it made me look like a psychopath calmly watching chaos unfold. By noon, the comments section was a dumpster fire. Half the town thought I was an animal abuser. The other half thought Karen was a hero. Emma slammed her laptop shut. We have to post the real footage. I'm way ahead of you, I said. That afternoon, I uploaded the full unedited video from my barn's security cameras. 4 angles, timestamps, audio, everything. It showed Karen breaking in, screaming fake lines, and literally saying the words, "I just need a video that looks like it." Within hours, the tide turned. The same people who'd called me a monster were now tearing her apart. Comments flooded in. This is insane. She set him up. This woman needs help. By evening, the local news picked it up. A small station ran a segment titled, HOA President Caught Faking Animal Attack. They even showed side-by-side clips. The edited version versus my security footage. The difference was brutal. Karen's reputation evaporated overnight. Sponsors for the HOA's Beautify the Neighborhood campaign dropped out. The board held an emergency session, without her. By the next day, she was officially removed as president. I thought that would be the end. But when people like Karen fall, they don't land softly, they explode. A few nights later, I was locking up the barn when I noticed something off. The scent hit me first, sharp, chemical, wrong. Then I saw the puddle near the back wall, shimmering faintly in the lantern light. Gasoline. Emma! I shouted. Call 911. I grabbed the nearest sandbag and dumped it over the spill, smothering the fumes. Then I spotted movement near the fence, a shadow darting away. I sprinted after it, but whoever it was already halfway across the field. The fire truck arrived minutes later. The firefighters confirmed what I'd already guessed. Someone had tried to set my barn on fire. The residue matched gasoline, poured through a crack in the siding. The deputy who showed up this time wasn't amused. "That's attempted arson," he said grimly. "You have cameras, right?" "Yeah," I said. "And I think I know who's starring in the footage." We pulled up the recordings inside my kitchen. Sure enough, the screen showed Karen creeping along the fence in a hoodie, carrying a red gas can. Her face was partly obscured, but the license plate on her SUV was perfectly clear. The deputy let out a low whistle. She's finished. He took a copy of the footage and left to file charges. I sat at the table, staring at the paused frame of Karen mid-crime, and finally exhaled. Emma put a hand on my shoulder. She's lost her mind. Yeah, I said quietly. But at least now she's done. You don't come back from felony arson. Except, as I'd learn later, even facing charges wasn't enough to stop her. She had one last stunt left in her. The kind of desperate, reckless move only someone like Karen would think was a good idea. For now, though, I locked up the barn, checked on Duke, and stood outside in the moonlight, breathing in the smell of hay and smoke. The night was calm again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a storm had just passed, and another was already forming on the horizon. The news spread through the county like wildfire. Ironically, the one kind Karen had failed to start. By morning, every local Facebook group, neighborhood chat, and even the town's small community radio station was buzzing about the HOA president arson scandal. The sheriff's department confirmed that an investigation was underway, and though her name wasn't mentioned publicly, everyone already knew who it was. You couldn't hide something like that in a small town. I woke up to 20 text messages from neighbors. Some were offering help. Some were apologizing for ever believing her Facebook lies. And one, my favorite, simply said, "I always knew that woman was insane. Duke's a hero." Emma handed me coffee and scrolled through her phone. "She's gone completely silent online," she said. "Her Facebook's deleted, the HOA page is locked, and Bruce posted that he's taking a leave of absence for personal reasons." "Good for Bruce," I said. "He might finally sleep through the night without panic attacks." Emma smirked. "And Karen? She's either lawyering up or spiraling down," I said. "Either way, she won't stay quiet for long." I was right. Again. By afternoon, a white SUV rolled up and parked halfway down the street. Karen stepped out, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf like she thought she was in a spy movie. Her posture was tense, but there was a weird confidence in her stride, a kind of delusional composure that only made sense if she believed the world owed her an apology. She didn't look toward my house. She didn't even glance at the barn. Instead, she started knocking on doors. Within an hour, she'd made it halfway around the neighborhood. I watched from the porch as she gestured animatedly at people, waving papers around, her voice sharp even from a distance. Most of the neighbors just nodded awkwardly and shut their doors. A few openly shook their heads. One woman, a teacher who'd gotten fined last year for having wind chimes too whimsical for community standards, actually laughed in Karen's face before closing the door. By sunset, Karen had reached my driveway. Emma whispered, "Oh, she's not actually coming here, is she?" "She is," I said. "And I'm not hiding." Karen marched up, heels clicking on the gravel like gunfire. She stopped 5 feet from the porch and glared at me over her sunglasses. "Congratulations," she said coldly. "You've ruined my life." "Karen," I said evenly, "you tried to burn down my barn. You ruined your own life." She scoffed. "You planted that gasoline. You fabricated that video. You've been manipulating everyone since the beginning." "Karen, there are 3 different camera angles," I said, "including one from your car's rear bumper. The only thing I manipulated was my patience." Her lips tightened, trembling slightly. "You think this is over? You think I'm going to let some smug farmer destroy everything I built?" "Built?" I said. "You mean the HOA? The fines? The control? The fake authority?" Her expression cracked for the first time. The confident mask slipped, revealing exhaustion underneath. Her voice softened, not from kindness, but from bitterness. "You don't get it, do you? People like me need order. Without it, everything falls apart. I made this neighborhood beautiful. I kept it safe. Then you moved in with your animals and your fences and your noise and made it all ugly." For a moment, there was something almost sad in her tone. Not remorse, just a warped sense of loss. I realized then that she wasn't driven by hate alone. She was addicted to control. She couldn't exist without it. Karen, I said quietly, it's not your job to fix the world. Especially when the world doesn't want your kind of fixing. Her face hardened again. You'll see, she said, pointing at me. You'll see what happens when people forget who's in charge. Then she turned and walked away, her SUV kicking gravel as she sped off. I thought that was the last I'd see of her, until the next morning when the sheriff himself showed up at my door. "Morning, Mr. Hale," he said, tipping his hat. "Got a few questions for you. Mind if I come in?" Emma and I exchanged a glance. "Sure," I said cautiously. "What's this about?" He pulled out a tablet. "We received an anonymous report claiming you've been keeping dangerous chemicals in your barn. Specifically, fertilizer compounds used to make explosives." I almost laughed. "You're kidding." "Wish I was," he said. "We take it seriously, though. Can I take a look?" "Of course," I said. We walked to the barn together. Duke snorted at the sheriff like he knew this was another round of nonsense. The officer did a thorough search, checked the shelves, the feed bins, the storage containers. He even sniffed one of the grain sacks. When he was done, he turned to me, eyebrows raised. "You're cleaner than a hardware store display. Whoever called this in was wasting our time." I didn't need to guess who it was. Before he left, he lowered his voice. "Between you and me, Mr. Hale, I'd suggest getting a restraining order. We're building a case, but if she keeps this up, you'll want some legal distance." I thanked him, and he drove off, leaving a trail of dust and frustration behind. Emma came out, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "So? What now?" "She's trying to frame me as dangerous," I said. "She's losing her grip." Emma handed me a mug. "Then maybe it's time we stopped waiting for her next move." That idea simmered in my head all afternoon. I wasn't the kind of man who liked revenge. I preferred peace, quiet, and predictable routines. But Karen had crossed the line into criminal obsession. She wasn't just an annoyance anymore, she was a genuine threat. So, I did what I do best, I planned. By evening, I'd set up 3 new cameras. Infrared, wide-angle, motion-triggered. I also called my friend Ethan, who worked in construction, and asked if he still had access to his portable livestock enclosure panels. "You planning to expand your pen?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. "I'll explain when you get here." By midnight, Ethan and I had assembled a narrow cattle run, a temporary holding lane built from steel panels, leading from the back gate straight into the barn. It was designed to keep livestock from wandering during transport. But in this case, it had a different purpose: containment. "Think she'll take the bait?" Ethan asked, tightening a bolt. "Oh, she'll come back," I said. "She can't help herself." He looked skeptical. "You're walking a fine line, buddy. You sure this won't blow up in your face?" "It's just a reminder," I said. "No one gets hurt. Just taught a lesson." He shrugged. "All right. But you owe me a beer if she ends up in the county jail again." The setup was simple. I left the back gate slightly ajar, the same one she'd used during her arson attempt. The cameras were hidden in the fence posts, and a single motion light was aimed right down the cattle lane. Anyone who entered would follow the open path, drawn by curiosity or suspicion, and end up in the barn. Once inside, the gate would swing shut behind them, locked by a weight-triggered latch. By morning, everything was ready. I didn't have to wait long. That night, at 11:42 p.m., the motion sensor pinged. I checked the live feed from my phone. There she was, Karen, wearing dark clothes this time, creeping through the open gate like she thought she was invisible. Emma appeared behind me, groggy but alert. "She's really back?" "Yep," I said. "Round 4. We watched as Karen slowly entered the narrow path. The panels creaked softly under her hands. She muttered something, flashlight jerking as she moved. Duke's shape was visible inside the barn, pacing slowly, snorting like he knew she was coming. As she stepped inside, the gate swung shut behind her with a satisfying clang. The motion light snapped on, bathing her in bright white. Karen froze, realizing she was trapped. No, 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 she whispered, tugging at the gate. This can't be happening again. Duke bellowed once, loud enough to echo across the pasture. Karen jumped back so fast she tripped and fell in the straw. I turned on the barn intercom, one I'd installed months ago to calm the animals remotely. My voice boomed through the speakers. Good evening, Karen, she shrieked, spinning toward the ceiling. Let me out. You've broken into my property again, I said calmly. And this time, it's all on camera. Trespassing, property damage, attempted arson, and now unlawful entry under a restraining order violation. I didn't know about the order, she shouted. It's been on file since this morning, I said. You were served electronically. She went pale. You can't. Already did, I said. And before you accuse me of cruelty, note that the bull's in his pen and the door's open. You're perfectly safe, as long as you stay calm. She slumped against the gate, defeated. You think this makes you a hero? No, I said. It just makes me done. The deputies arrived 15 minutes later. When they pulled her out of the pen, she didn't resist. She didn't shout or flail this time. She just walked quietly, staring straight ahead like a balloon that had finally run out of air. As the cruiser drove off, Emma stood beside me in the doorway. You think she'll finally stop? Maybe not today, I said. But for once, it's not up to her anymore. The pasture was silent except for the chirp of crickets and Duke's steady breathing. The moon rose high and silver, reflecting off the steel panels still glinting from the light. I leaned against the fence, finally feeling the weight of weeks lift off my shoulders. Karen had built her life around control, but the night she lost it, she handed me back mine. The next morning dawned eerily quiet. No headlights creeping past the property, no HOA emails, no fresh gossip from the neighborhood app. Just the rhythmic sound of Duke chewing hay and the faint hum of cicadas warming up in the trees. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up tense. But the peace felt unnatural, like the silence after a storm that hasn't quite finished. By mid-morning, the sheriff called. Thought you'd want to know, Mr. Hale, he said, his tone measured. Karen's being held for psychiatric evaluation. The district attorney's pushing to add the arson and trespassing charges, but her lawyers arguing mental health diversion. I sighed. So she's going to claim she lost her mind. Wouldn't be the first time, he said. But you're in the clear now. If she comes near you again, it's automatic jail time. Appreciate the update, I said. And Sheriff, thanks for putting up with all this. He chuckled dryly. You're not the first man to say that name like it's a storm warning. When I hung up, Emma was already packing a basket with muffins. You know what you need, she said. A reset day. No fences, no cameras, no HOA. Just fishing, maybe some peace for once. I smiled. You volunteering to come, or guarding the fort? I'll guard, she said. Somebody's gotta make sure Duke doesn't get bored without his favorite enemy. I left for the lake around noon, the truck bed loaded with rods and sandwiches. The day felt strange, too calm, too empty. Even the air seemed lighter without Karen's constant shadow. But peace is a muscle. It feels weak when you haven't used it in a while. I stayed out until sunset. The water shimmered gold, the sky slowly bruising purple, and for the first time in a long time, I actually forgot about the barn, the cameras, the chaos. Until I pulled back into the driveway and saw the car. Not Karen's SUV, she didn't have access to it anymore, but a dark gray sedan parked across from the property. The engine idled, headlights off. I recognized the face behind the windshield immediately, Bruce. He got out as I stopped the truck, hands raised like he expected me to be holding a gun. Hey, I come in peace, he said quickly. I climbed down from the truck, wary. You sure picked the wrong neighborhood to surprise someone in, Bruce. He gave a nervous laugh. Yeah, I know. Look, I just wanted to talk. About what? Karen, he said. She called me. My stomach sank. She's in custody. How? She got one call, he said. She used it on me. He rubbed the back of his neck. She said she had something on you. Some kind of leverage. Said if I didn't get it for her, she'd drag me into it too. I frowned. Leverage? What could she possibly have now? She said she still had footage. Something that proves you manipulated the bull to attack her. Some nonsense about cruelty laws. I told her it made no sense, but she said she hid the file. My mind raced. Hidden where? She wouldn't tell me, he said. Only that it's not digital. Said it's somewhere the animals would protect it. Does that mean anything to you? I froze. The barn loft. There was one spot, behind the old hay chute, where I'd once seen Karen lurking on an earlier inspection. At the time, I thought she was just being nosy. But if she'd stashed something there during one of her break-ins… Bruce, I said, you didn't tell her you were coming here, did you? He shook his head. No. I just wanted to warn you. She's angry, but she's scared too. She said, if I go down, I'm not going alone. That cold, familiar pressure settled in my chest again. You did the right thing. Go home. And Bruce. Yeah. Get yourself a new HOA. Preferably one with less gasoline and insanity. He gave a tight smile and drove off, leaving me in the fading light. Inside the barn, the air was thick with hay and the low rumble of Duke shifting in his pen. I climbed the ladder to the loft, my flashlight cutting through dust and cobwebs. Sure enough, something glinted behind a stack of old feed bags, a small waterproof case wedged into the wooden wall. I pulled it out, popped the latch, and found a flash drive wrapped in plastic, along with a folded piece of paper. The note was short, written in her sharp handwriting. You think you're clever. But everyone has a weak spot. See you soon. I stared at it for a long moment. The drive was harmless enough on its own, but the threat behind it wasn't. Even in custody, Karen was still playing games. I plugged the drive into my laptop back at the house. It contained exactly what she'd promised. One heavily edited video showing me standing near Duke as he snorted and stamped, cut together to look like I was provoking him. Her narration was dubbed over the top, breathy and panicked. He's making it charge. He's trained it to attack. I almost laughed. She missed her calling. Should have gone into fiction. But as ridiculous as it was, I knew what she was doing. She wasn't trying to win legally anymore. She was trying to ruin me publicly. Even if the sheriff cleared me, a single misleading clip could still light social media on fire again. Emma came in and stood behind me. That's what she left? Yeah, I said. Her last grenade. Emma folded her arms. Then don't delete it. I looked at her. What? Turn it in. Let the DA see exactly how far she went. The more she digs her hole, the less chance she has of crawling out. I nodded slowly. You're right. The next morning, I handed the drive to the sheriff's office. They logged it as evidence and I figured that was that. But Karen wasn't finished. 2 nights later, around 2 a.m., the motion sensors tripped again. I jolted awake, grabbed my phone, and opened the live feed. At first, I thought it was another animal, a stray raccoon maybe, but then the camera adjusted and my blood ran cold. A person was creeping along the side of the barn, moving slowly, cautiously. Emma whispered, "Tell me that's not her." "It can't be," I said. "She's supposed to be under supervision." The figure turned slightly, catching the light. It wasn't Karen, it was Bruce. He was holding a crowbar. "Why in God's name?" I muttered, already pulling on my boots. By the time I got outside, Bruce was at the barn door, struggling with the latch. I shouted, "Stop," and he froze like a deer in headlights. "Bruce," I said. "What the hell are you doing?" He dropped the crowbar instantly, hands up. "I didn't want to. She told me to." "Karen? She's in custody." "She called again," he shouted. "Said if I didn't destroy the evidence, she'd send my old emails to the board, stuff from years ago, fines she covered for me. She still has friends on the inside." I took a step closer. "So you decided to break into my property in the middle of the night? I thought you'd be asleep." I just needed the flash drive. It's already with the sheriff, I said. You're too late. Bruce went pale. Oh God. We both froze as Duke snorted behind us, stomping hard enough to rattle the panels. Bruce, I said slowly, step away from the barn. He nodded and backed up. I swear I wasn't going to hurt anything. I believe you, I said. But you need to leave before you become Chapter 7 of this nightmare. He didn't argue. He just ran, tripped over the fence once, scrambled up, and disappeared into the dark. By the time the sheriff arrived, Bruce was already on his way to booking. He confessed everything down to the phone call. They traced the call, and sure enough, it came from a pay phone near the county clinic where Karen was supposedly being evaluated. She'd slipped out during an unsupervised therapy walk and spent her freedom threatening her last loyal follower. The sheriff shook his head as he filled out the report. She's like poison ivy. You think you've killed it, then it grows back meaner. Can you keep her locked up this time? I asked. Trust me, he said. After tonight, the judge will. When they finally left, I stood in the yard, watching the flashing red and blue lights fade into the distance. The barn looked peaceful again, the air still heavy with the scent of hay and diesel. Duke was quiet now, chewing contentedly like nothing had happened. Emma slipped her arm through mine. You okay? Yeah, I said slowly. Just tired. Of all of it. You think it's over now? I looked toward the fence line, the place where Karen had stood so many times, and exhaled. It's never really over with people like her. But for once, the story's not hers to write anymore. We walked back toward the house, the gravel crunching softly underfoot. The barn lights flicked off automatically behind us, and the night returned to stillness, deep, quiet, and earned. And as I closed the door behind us, I realized that for the first time since this whole saga began, I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I was simply done. The morning after Bruce's arrest felt strange, like the neighborhood had finally exhaled after holding its breath for months. The sun was out, the air was crisp, and the only sound was Duke lowing lazily in his pen. No sirens. No angry footsteps. No Karen. I poured myself a coffee and sat on the porch, watching steam rise from the mug. The world looked deceptively normal, but my gut told me the storm wasn't entirely gone. With Karen, it never was. Emma joined me, barefoot and half awake. You're up early, she said. Habit, I replied. After weeks of midnight intrusions, sleeping in feels illegal. She smiled faintly, rubbing her arms against the cool air. It's over now, though, Bruce confessed. The sheriff said Karen's being transferred to a long-term facility, right? That's what he said, I admitted. But knowing her, she'll charm someone into believing she's harmless before the paperwork's even dry. Emma sighed. You think she'll ever actually get better? I stared at the distant line of houses, roofs glinting in the morning light. Karen doesn't want better, I said. She wants control. And people like that never think they're sick. They think the world is. We fell into silence, the kind that's almost comfortable but still weighted with what's unsaid. Finally, Emma nudged me. So what are you going to do now that you're officially HOA public enemy number 1? Same thing I've always done, I said. Fix fences, feed Duke, and pretend the world makes sense. She laughed softly. You could write a book about this. Yeah, I said. But nobody would believe it. By noon, I was back in the barn, patching the scrape on the door where Bruce had tried to pry it open. The air smelled like cedar and hay. Duke watched me work, swishing his tail like he was keeping score. I caught myself talking to him. You know, buddy, we really should get you a medal or something. You've done more for law enforcement than half this county. He snorted, unimpressed, and went back to chewing hay. I was halfway through tightening the last hinge when I heard the sound, gravel crunching under slow tires. My chest tightened automatically. I wiped my hands and walked outside, half expecting another unmarked car. But it wasn't the sheriff. It was the county investigator, A man named Tanner I'd met weeks earlier when the first vandalism reports started. He got out of the truck and smiled politely. "Mr. Hale. Mind if I come by for a quick word?" "Sure," I said cautiously. "What's this about?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It's about your neighbor, Karen." Of course it was. He flipped open a folder. "She's not in county custody anymore. Her lawyer filed a mental health appeal. The judge granted supervised release pending trial." I felt my jaw clench. "You mean she's back?" He nodded slowly. "She's required to stay at her sister's property in the next county. But she's already violated the distance order once. We're keeping an eye on it." "Fantastic," I muttered. "Does this woman have diplomatic immunity or something?" He gave me a sympathetic look. "She's unraveling, Hale. We think she's burned every bridge she ever had. If she shows up here again, call us immediately. Don't confront her. She's unpredictable." "Don't worry," I said grimly. "I've learned that lesson." Tanner left, and I stood in the driveway long after his truck disappeared. My peace of mind, whatever fragile piece of it I'd started to rebuild, was gone again. I walked back to the porch, where Emma was pruning her potted herbs. "She's out," I said simply. Emma's hand froze mid-snip. "You're kidding." "I wish." She set the shears down, eyes narrowing. "We should get security signs, something obvious. Maybe motion alarms that trigger lights. Or better, move." I shook my head. "If we move, she wins. This is our land. And I'm not letting a deranged bureaucrat run me off it." That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me sit up. Every rustle outside sounded like footstep. Even Duke's occasional low bellow sent adrenaline through me. But the hours dragged by quietly. No cars. No flashlights. Just the hum of crickets and the distant barking of coyotes. By morning, I started to believe maybe, just maybe, she'd stay gone. Then came the letter. It was in the mailbox, postmarked 2 towns over. No return address. Just my name written in her unmistakable handwriting. Tight, controlled, and angry even in cursive. Emma watched as I slid it open carefully, half expecting glitter bombs or something worse. Inside was a single page that read, "You've taken everything from me. My position. My reputation. My home. You think you've won, but you don't understand yet. People like me don't disappear, we adapt. Enjoy your peace while it lasts." No threats, no accusations, just that quiet, menacing confidence. The kind that made my skin crawl. Emma folded the letter slowly. "You're turning that over to the sheriff, right?" "Already on my way," I said. The sheriff's office took it seriously. They logged it as evidence, added it to the restraining order, and promised to patrol the neighborhood for a few days. Still, it didn't help me sleep any easier. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. The HOA board knocked on my door. 3 of them stood there. Bruce wasn't one of them. He'd moved away entirely. These were the quieter members, the ones who had always let Karen run the show. A woman named Lorna cleared her throat. "Mr. Hale, we wanted to apologize. For everything. We let her go too far." I leaned against the doorframe. "You think..." She flinched. "We're disbanding the HOA. Effective immediately." That caught me off guard. "Disbanding?" "Yes," she said. "After what happened, nobody wants to be part of it. The neighborhood voted unanimously. The bylaws are being dissolved, and any outstanding fines or restrictions are void." Emma appeared behind me, wide-eyed. "You mean no more HOA?" Lorna smiled faintly. "No more Karen. No more HOA." For a second, I didn't know how to react. Months of tension, surveillance, sabotage, it all started with that organization. To hear it was gone felt surreal. Like winning a war you never wanted to fight. I finally managed a nod. "Thank you." Genuinely. When they left, Emma hugged me so tightly I almost dropped my coffee. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually outlasted her." But deep down, I wasn't sure it was over. Not with that letter sitting in the sheriff's file. The next week passed quietly. I repaired fences, cleaned the barn roof, and even took Duke for a cautious walk around the pasture perimeter. Each day felt a little lighter. The neighborhood seemed to heal, too. Kids started playing outside again. Someone even put up a community potluck flyer on the bulletin board where Karen used to post her memos of doom. By the weekend, the old fear had faded enough that Emma convinced me to host a small barbecue. A goodbye HOA celebration, she called it. The turnout surprised me. Half the neighborhood came. People brought casseroles, desserts, and enough potato salad to feed an army. Lorna made a toast. To peace and common sense, she said, raising her glass. And to our neighbor, who reminded us that standing up to bullies doesn't make you difficult, it makes you brave. Everyone cheered, and for the first time in months, laughter filled the street instead of whispers. The night was perfect, right up until I saw the headlights at the far end of the road. A gray sedan slowed near the cul-de-sac, paused, and then drove off. My heart stopped for a beat, but I said nothing. Maybe it was just someone passing through. Maybe. After the party, as the guests drifted home and the last embers faded in the grill, I stood alone by the fence, looking toward the horizon. The night was quiet again, peaceful, almost sacred. Emma joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "What are you thinking?" "That peace is fragile," I said softly. "And some people can't stand to see it in other hands." She looked at me. "You think she'll come back?" "I think she'll try," I said. "But next time, I'll be ready before she is." A week later, the final twist came, not from Karen, but from the county itself. I got a letter from the district attorney confirming that Karen had been officially charged with trespassing, harassment, vandalism, and attempted arson. The mental health diversion had been revoked after the sheriff's report about her letter and Bruce's coerced break-in. She was remanded to custody pending trial. Emma read the letter twice before exhaling. "So, that's it." "That's it," I said quietly. We stood in the kitchen for a long time, letting it sink in. There was no victory dance, no sense of triumph. Just relief. A slow, quiet release of pressure that had built for months. That night, I went out to the barn one last time before bed. Duke lifted his head and blinked at me, chewing lazily. I scratched behind his ear. "It's over, boy," I said. "Really over this time." He snorted once, then went back to eating. As I turned to leave, my flashlight caught the side of the barn, the same place where Karen had painted the word nuisance months ago. The paint was long gone, washed away by rain and time, but I could still see faint traces of red in the wood grain. A ghost of the past, stubborn and hard to scrub away. I ran my hand over it, then smiled. "Let it fade on its own," I murmured. "Just like her." When I stepped outside, the stars were bright and the night was quiet, truly quiet this time. The kind of silence that doesn't wait for trouble to return. The kind you earn. And for the first time since moving into that neighborhood, I felt like the land finally belonged to me again.